All right, everyone. I think we are live.
Excellent.
And
Yeah,
I'm
man.
happy to say it doesn't look like I'm dropping like 40% of my frames for
Give,
the.
give it time. Give it
Yeah,
time.
if it's anything like the weeks before, it'll like halfway through, it'll just brick
Yeah,
and kick
hopefully that's
everyone
not
off,
the
but
case,
we'll
however.
see. All right, well, I guess tonight we're gonna record another podcast, and I think we have a pretty interesting topic tonight. Um, we'll
Yeah, no.
be kind of just almost like discussing the internet's reaction to two of the new models that Games Workshop slash Forge World revealed to the wider community. Those being the Black Library, like celebration miniature of the one female commissar. I don't even remember her name, like Severin something. And I'll have to look at that. And then more recently, the Forge World releasing a single image of the Blood Angels Primarch.
Yeah. Which, I mean, admittedly, I feel the last 2 weeks or so we haven't recorded like a podcast episode, sort of because there wasn't, a whole lot of new stuff being shown to talk about. And recently, I feel there's just been a slew of things. The two models you mentioned, Adam, but then also they've even some more Gene Stealer Cult models have been shown, like a really neat looking sort of buggy vehicle thing that I
Yeah,
think's
that's
look
true.
pretty cool. That certainly be worth talking about probably sometime soon. And I mean, I think maybe this weekend they're putting a bunch of those motorbikes and stuff up on pre-order. So like that stuff's
Oh
coming
boy.
soon. So I imagine we'll be able to talk about
Lots of
that,
stuff to talk about.
yeah, in detail. But I think, yeah, because of sort of the strong reactions to these two models on various platforms, be it Instagram or Facebook, it seemed like something that we should talk about, primarily due to their a lot of very negative opinions on the models. And yeah, just thought something that we should weigh in on and kind of tell our thoughts on it.
Particularly because the three of us we've essentially since the start of the podcast, we've been very vocal and I feel painfully honest about just about all of the Games Workshop sculpts we see, talking about what do we think is bad or wrong or should be changed. So I
Yeah, we're
feel,
always complaining about stuff.
yeah, we're no strangers to it. Um,
Yeah, but I feel I don't know. I feel a lot of the criticism that have been shown to these models are more unfounded and not like something like, oh, this sculpt, like I'm not sure about this particular piece or this element, but instead it's like this is a trash model and terrible sculptor. It's that sort of thing, which just seems very unfounded, and it isn't like a sort of a constructive comment or one.
yeah. And I mean, all the people saying all those things, like, they're never going to go and try and sculpt something. They're never going to go and, like, try and, say, improve on such a model. Like,
They're
they
going
just.
back to assemble their Gene Stealer cultists without cutting off any of the mold lines.
I mean, that, or at least that's how it comes off to me. Yeah. Um. So, are we in the position, do you think we just want to start the
Yeah,
podcast
maybe let's
itself
just
right
get
now?
right in. Let's
Jump
just
in,
Jump
dive
in.
on
people.
in.
Jump in, everybody. We got a good
We
show planned for you. You're gonna like it. The salt's going to flow. There'll be more
Mhm.
salt than a gotcha streaming pool. More salt.
um. Did everyone have their their recording stuff up and make sure it's set to their proper microphones and all that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's done.
All right. So then I guess that's good. So we're ready, everybody?
Yep.
Yeah.
Bring it.
All right. 3, 2, 1, record. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Dragged into Turbolasers, a Between the Bolter and Me podcast. This is episode 53, and I'm your host, Eric Wire, and I'm joined with my two brothers, Adam Wire.
Hey, everybody.
And Greg Wire.
Hey, everyone.
Well, nice of everyone to join us today. Here we have hopefully an exciting episode to talk about some recent developments and model releases. One that I think we're going to be a little bit salty about, specifically.
Not just a little bit salty.
Yeah. Specifically, we want to talk about the recently unveiled Sanguinius model. So the latest Forge World Primarch model, as well as a sort of Black Library promotional model, which is like a female commissar model for who's a character from a few short stories and an upcoming novel series that they have sort of a promotional miniature for that I believe was revealed maybe last week, and earlier this week the Sanguinius model were released. And right off the bat, I think both are really good-looking models.
Yeah, so I would say, like, somewhat surprisingly, the salt that we're going to be bringing out isn't pertaining to the models themselves and more to the internet's reaction to them.
Yeah, no.
As Eric said, I think both of the models are great.
Yeah, I mean, the first one that was revealed like a week or so ago was the Black Library one of Commissar Severina Rain, and I think in many regards this is a pretty remarkable model and is a big step forward for just Games Workshop, and I almost feel like the miniature wargaming hobby in general, like mainly in the fact that this is a female model that is not overly sexualized, sculpted really well, and I mean, it's to the point where, like, you could use the model to represent all manner of things, whether you're using it to represent a female commissar or, like, a really young, like, cadet right out of, like, the schooling or whatever for the commissar. Like, you can do whatever you want with it.
Or an athletic, like, more ballerina-type body build of a male. I mean, that would work, too. I mean, I think it's a very realistic sculpt of an individual. Unfortunately, they didn't feel the need to, like, over-exaggerate anatomy to hit you over the head that it's supposed to be female.
Yeah.
Yeah, agreed.
Like, the only thing that I kind of wish they didn't do was have her standing up on that rock, because that's kind of an overly used.
Or yeah, she's not standing on the head of a Chaos Space Marine or some bullshit.
That's true.
And this might also be the smallest bolt pistol Games Workshop has ever produced. I mean, it's still too big.
That's something.
Think. It's still too big for what it is, but I don't think we're going to get any better than this. So I applaud them for it.
Yeah, so I mean, overall, yeah, I agree. I think it's a good model. I feel it's proportioned quite well, better than, I don't know, some GW models. The pistol is, at least there was some effort to make it smaller. Our sword isn't, I mean, it's still not a small sword, but it's still not like overly huge. And yeah, I think it looks good. It's very obviously a commissar when you see it, but she's somewhat androgynous, like you were saying, could be used for kind of different things, and that's fine. But I feel there was a lot of people. I mean, I think lots of people like the model, but there was certainly a lot of kind of criticism and backlash sort of centered around the model for various things. A bunch of which are like, that doesn't look like a female, that looks like a man, or like that looks like a teenage boy, or like things of that nature. What do you guys all think of that sort of thing?
Well, I heard a lot of people or read a lot of people saying things like, oh, this is 28 millimeters, such a small scale. Like, with such a small scale, you have to exaggerate things to make it apparent whether it's a male or a female. And first off, you don't have to do anything.
But then
And I think
people
that's
could argue then
stupid.
you'll get like all of the bones range of miniatures, Greg.
I mean, I think that's stupid, having to exaggerate things such that you, if you look at from across the table, that you can tell, like, yep, that was supposed to be a female because her breasts are so big, it's absurd. Like, that's stupid. I think that's stupid. And it's not suggesting that the people sculpting the models think too highly of women.
One of our listeners here, Lifeboat Sanks, chimed in and says here that there are not enough. Does it look like not enough penises in Warhammer?
Well, yeah. So for all the instances of female models wearing their breastplates with cups sculpted for each individual breast, for every instance of that, it would be good if GW had an instance of a model with a cod piece sculpted,
yeah, I mean, like,
such that you could see.
I don't know for sure that like those
dick.
Imperial Guardsmen are males, like, because they could be either or with like this scale, so it'd make a lot more sense if they had like a gigantic cod piece, like bigger than their bolters or laser rifles, just so we knew for sure that was it's a very important thing to know the gender from across the table, and a giant dick would really help, I think, and it would be good to see that on more models.
Yeah, there's not enough.
But like towards that end, like Games Workshop already has like they've certainly started to release a lot more female models than they had in the past, and they already have a lot of them that they do have that sort of like breastplate sort of armor, like the Sisters of Battle and some of that stuff. Like they already have those models. Like, why does every new female model have to fit in that same sort of trope?
Yeah, it's nice to see that this one doesn't.
Yeah, and like, I mean, they've already, they released for Blackstone Fortress have some female Traitor Guardsmen, and they look very similar to their male counterparts. And like, I feel a lot of the
people didn't even complain about them.
Well,
yeah, and I feel they didn't because they didn't even realize it.
Yeah.
And if they did, maybe they would have come out of the woodwork to like announce their rage. So like, I don't know. I feel in general that's GW doing it well, that they've introduced some female models like that
they didn't make fanfare out of it. They didn't try to pat themselves on the back. They just did what they should have done.
Yeah. And again, it doesn't have to be all of their female models, their ranges. They can have some that are more like the Sisters of Battle look. That's fine. But if it's just one or the other, that makes it harder to...
Well, so people also were complaining that, like, why are they releasing this character and not some other female character from Black Library books? And I mean, in the end, I feel the answer is obvious. This model is a promotional model to try and promote a new book in which she's the main character. And I think in many regards, this is like the perfect model because there are tons of Imperial Guard players, and I think a lot of them wouldn't mind having another nice Commissar model. That's great. You can fit this in like so many things. Like,
You know, what the most recent plastic Commissar model is god awful.
yeah, I
Like,
really
it's a
don't like
bad model.
it.
Like, yeah, I think the notion of, like, why this character when there are so many others? Like, I feel like it is very obvious why this character. One, they're trying to promote a new character that they're writing stories about and get people excited about, but also they wanted to make a model that even if you don't use the model as that particular character, it is very functional for other roles, namely an Imperial Guard commissar or some Imperial officer. And I could imagine somewhat soon they're going to be revising and re-releasing an Imperial Guard book such that this will be a timely release.
When like it just seems like, well, sure, I would love like a model of like some of the Tanith ghosts, like Adnan's ghost models, like maybe one of the females, like Tanya Creed or something like that would have been cool. Like I'm not denying that I would love to see that, or I'd like to see a good model of Gaunt or whatever, stuff like this. But like they don't need to do that to promote their books. Like anyone who has read the Gaunt's Ghost novels, like they don't need a model for them to be like, oh shit, the new book was released. Like I'm gonna go out and get it. Like I mean, hell, they just did release the sequel to War Master, and I don't remember what it's called, but like I'm reading it now. Like I didn't need some model made to get me to buy that. Everyone who's at least somewhat invested in those stories are already rushing out to get them.
Well, I
Like, but
saw.
if they want to promote a new like novel series, like it makes sense that they might make a model of it, and
Well, because
why not?
honestly, the Black Library is releasing books and stories all the time. I like read almost none of them. I am more interested in trying to read some of these short stories because, like, I guess this promotional campaign like made me actually pay a little bit more attention and not necessarily just delete all the Black Library emails as soon as I get them. But I saw some people saying, and now, so I hardly read any of the Horus Heresy books, but I guess there must be some female, like, spacecraft captain related to Korn. Do you know who this character is, Eric?
No, I think maybe on one of Angron's vessels or
Yeah,
something.
so there's apparently a female captain, and people are like, oh, that would have been so great because she's a strong female character. And, like, sure, it would be cool if they would make such a model, but, like,
there are tons of strong female models in the Black Library
you
books.
couldn't easily use a model of a spaceship captain in any of your Warhammer armies, Warhammer 40,000 armies. I guess people could use it in the Inc. 28 scene to convert a rogue trader or convert an interesting...
Or maybe they could release like one of like data slate thing for this model that's really bad and doesn't really fit in any armies properly, that it fucks up like what your formations or whatever are, and like everyone would revile it and make fun of it the instant it came out. So like
sounds like what I want.
Yes, like what? Yeah, I feel it just seems like people being entitled, like, oh, why didn't they make this best character? Like, it's obvious why they didn't. And honestly, we should be happy that they're doing it at all, that they're making some of these Black Library theme models. Maybe if it's successful, like the Eisenhorn model that I think was successful, maybe we'll get more of these. Maybe we will get those Tanith models. And like, it's good to see that like this is one of these promotional models, and the caliber of the sculpt is really high. Like, it's not just like, just throw this to like someone who's just learning the process or something. Like they,
It's not like the chapter master to the Blood Ravens that Forge World released.
yeah.
Yeah, it's a
That's a
terrible
bad
model.
sculpt. That's a bad sculpt.
But anyway, if we see in the near future or the future some Imperial Guard models that look anything like this, it'll be great.
Yeah. Hell yeah.
Yeah, I feel it's a good sign for what's to come.
And
Okay,
it
yeah.
has been annoying seeing the backlash to this model on the internet.
Probably people coming on like, oh, I could get a third-party female commissar that's much better than that.
Well, when like people were comparing this to like the female commissar model years ago that Chris Fitzpatrick made, like that is a terrible sculpt compared to this sculpt here.
Yeah, it's not good.
It's like, I mean, sure, you're allowed to like it, and I think hell, we probably even have a model of it, the model of it somewhere. But in terms of like the quality of the sculpt and everything, this is much more believable, much more realistic, and overall just better.
A better
I think maybe that
pose.
old Fitzpatrick Commissar model was something that he had sculpted to like send to GW
Yeah,
to like
that's
show
true.
his talents.
Yeah.
So I guess it was one of his earlier things.
Yeah, no, I'm pretty sure that is the case.
Okay, so we've spent a lot of time talking about Severina Rain. Now, so this model obviously got a ton of backlash, and then I guess it was earlier this, or maybe last week, Forge World decided to show a picture of the Blood Angel Primarch, and I feel this also has received a tremendous amount of criticism.
This, I think, has gotten a lot more criticism.
And this, I feel a lot of the criticism was actually directed at the sculpt itself and like how well it was done and executed. Whereas the previous model, I feel people were just complaining to complain.
And the people that like their objectified female models were upset that
was shown, and I mean, admittedly, as GW tends to do when they reveal Primarch models, they almost always show a singlet that for a company, or at least in their White Dwarf magazines and such, they often talk about like, oh, there's always that release. There's one image of it that the angle's perhaps not the most flattering, or that doesn't quite convey what the model looks like or what the pose is doing, and sort of helps fuel these fires. Like I feel every single Primarch is released and they're technically brilliant by almost all of them, and people come out of the woodwork to say how like they hate it and how like, oh, this isn't sculpted well or whatever, when it tends to just be trivial shit like, oh, I think he should have had a beard, or I don't like that that sword has a pommel like this, or just stupid shit like that. But go and sort of vilify and say like the sculptor was bad, or like, let's go to Kabuki and buy their models, they're so good. And it just
laugh out loud.
is ridiculous, which I guess we can get a little bit into that. But I think Forge World, I mean, I guess any sort of publicity is good publicity, they say, but I still kind of feel that Forge World would do better for when doing these sorts of reveals to like just go right out the gate, at least show multiple images of the models, or do a 360 thing like they're going to. Like, no reason to like, they've already spoiled it, they've revealed it. Why like wait a week or whatever until they actually show the model?
Well, I mean, I think this model looks great even at this angle.
I mean, I agree.
I I guess maybe it hasn't helped them that all of the other Forge World images and releases that they've recently showed have been really bad. So maybe some people went into it thinking, oh, Forge World has been releasing a bunch of subpar stuff. This is probably subpar as well. And then they just decided they were going to see that in it when that's just
Well,
not the
yeah, because
case.
I feel I've seen some comments, one of which is like, "Oh, this model like looks like garbage. It's like just one more sign, Forge World is going down and not producing good stuff anymore." And like, I feel hell, one of our last streams we talked about how like Forge World, some of their models really the quality isn't like the quality control isn't there, this and that, like some of those new Night Lord things, and like that's I feel that's objectively true, but like this model is not that. I feel this model is like showing the world like, hey, we still have it in us. We can create technically brilliant pieces of like miniature art that sort of challenge what a model like a 40K model, or in this case 30K model, can look like. And you might not necessarily love the pose or love the hair or love various things about it, but to say that this is a bad sculpt or something like is ridiculous. And then to compare it like this is bad, but Kabuki Miniatures, who have just make a line of basically copyright infringing Primark models that all of them look kind of laughable and bad, and to say that, oh, these are better than like the stuff Simon Egan has been doing, I don't know, I feel is ridiculous.
It is ridiculous.
But to me, just seeing this single image of it, like immediately when looking at it, I kind of thought of various sort of Baroque pieces of like artwork and paintings and whatnot, and looking around a little bit, it's almost certainly this was based off of a particular piece of artwork by, I think it was a Baroque artist. I forget the gentleman's name, but oh yeah, you have it there, which is like an angel basically banishing Satan.
I think it's supposed a picture of Michael, the angel Michael, banishing Satan, and I think the artist is somewhere on the lines of Guido Reni. I'm probably pronounced his name wrong, but it's a pretty well-known painting. I mean, I've certainly seen it around. And yeah, the model has a very similar pose to what we see in the Simon Egan sculpt.
Yeah, and I personally, I think that's really neat that like immediately I got that sort of classical Renaissance Baroque imagery just looking at it. Yeah. Not necessarily being able to place the image, but then to actually see it, like to actually see some of those influences, I think is really neat. And Forge World had mentioned that there's going to be like another sort of limited version with a larger sort of
display base
or whatever, which I feel is very likely that the Bloodthirster that he kills. So I suspect this pose is probably him sort of like diving down to like slay or kill this Bloodthirster. So very much like the banishing Satan thing. And I think with that, it'll probably make the pose make even more sense. And if that is the case, it also kind of gets like, why didn't they just show that off the bat?
Yeah, I mean, Lifeboat Sank, a friend here, said that he thinks the right leg looks a little bit off. And I feel like perhaps if we could see other angles of this, we would be able to tell if that is the case or not. But this image does make it look like his right leg maybe is a little weird.
But I mean, this whole thing brings up an interesting notion as well. I feel a lot of people, just about everyone kind of has some notion in their head how physics works in real life, and almost universally their notion of how things would work and how things would fall is just completely wrong. So,
or yeah, at
it's
least
just
has
like completely
flaws
wrong.
in
Your
it.
intuition about how things would happen is often wrong. And so in this case, like, we're not even sure what exactly he's doing. It seems as if he's like plunging down on some foe. And so for, I feel, anyone to say like, oh, those legs should be like this,
Seems somewhat naive, and like some
yeah,
criticism I've heard is just like, oh, the legs looks like he's just falling or something, and it doesn't fit with the rest of the body. Like,
I don't think that's what
I
you
don't
guys
think
do when
people
you're
just fall
falling.
like that. And
But then my
and then
intuition is probably wrong.
ultimately, yeah, but then ultimately, like, we can't even see them. The image isn't large. It's the angle at which it is, like, it's there's the one potentially questionable leg is coming directly out at us. Like, we can't even see it. We can't really see how his one hand is. Like, there are a lot of things that we just can't quite tell. Like, so like to be this so critical about it is just seems somewhat dumb, because I feel almost all the Primarch models have had very interesting poses, some of which are more stoic, some of which are a little bit more animated, but they all, I feel, kind of speak to the personality and character of the Primarchs. And I think that's always been a strength of some of these Primarch models that Simon Egan sculpts. And I think he kind of pushes some of these poses more than a lot of other sculptors would. And I think that's is good. But also to that end, like, you see a lot of people complaining online about how, like, oh, the pose is bad, not like too dynamic, this and that. But then it seemed like the same people who are also like, oh, like, Rogel Dorn was terrible, static pose, this one's terrible, dynamic pose. I mean, it seems like you can't win. That some are really dynamic, that's not good. Some are really static, that's not good. So, like, I guess it's just
But they
nothing.
can, yeah,
Nothing will be right here.
but
Well,
and
can we bring up a picture of like what Kabuki's version of
I feel
this
it's
of
high
Sanguinius?
time. It's high time we look at some of the
Because I've
alternative
seen
models. Like,
a
here we
few
go.
a few people talking about how, like, oh, this model's garbage. Like, guess I better go and get the cool Kabuki version. And
That I
uh,
feel is like laughable. Like, if you compare the two models side by side, the Kabuki model is a joke.
like, those wings look so bad. His sword is like so off. Like, everything about this model
He's
looks
line
terrible.
dancing, line dancing.
It does look like he's doing
His
something
head
like
is
that.
tiny. That sword is stupid.
Like, I hate the Kabuki model. It's like objectively worse in like
Yeah.
every single
I mean,
way.
whoever did it certainly has some talent, but like, whew, that's a
It,
bad design.
I would never pay money for this or
I
like
wouldn't
want it
even
as a
want to
gift.
know.
Whereas like the 4-year-old version, I would like the model. I just Kabuki, like, and I feel this is another thing. Every time Primarch model comes out, people like come out to say that, like, oh, get the Kabuki stuff, and like they're all bad, or all of the ones I've seen are bad.
Yeah, they're not even on.
Yeah.
They're not even in the same league in terms
Well,
of
are
like
they cheap?
sculpt
Do they
quality.
not cost very much money?
I
Does
assume
anyone
they
know?
probably cost a bunch of money too,
Probably
because
not
they're
as
like
much as the
resin
Primarchs.
casts and stuff. But like, it just looked bad.
And the detailing between the two are also not at all comparable.
And I also saw a comment, someone suggesting that this new Sanguinius model looks like a bad kit bash of Conrad Kerr's, like the other Forge World Primarch. And
Oh
like,
my god.
it's just
Whoa.
so ridiculous. Like, their poses look somewhat similar, but like that's like all like their faces are totally different. Their armor is dramatically different. Like everything's different about them. Like
We're not Connor.
to kit back one into the other
It's not Connor
would
that cares.
require.
Which one is it? It's the Iron Hand or
I thought that the Night Haunter is the one that.
Oh no, I thought they were talking about what's his name. He also has a jump pack.
Oh, maybe they were. What is his name? Korvax.
Yeah.
Korak.
No,
yeah, maybe, I guess. Yeah, I guess that's true. I mean, so that pose looks more similar, but the armor is very, very different. Yeah, the Raven Guard Primarch.
That's what I imagine they were referring to.
Yeah, that's true. That makes more sense.
Yeah, I think so.
I guess another thing that I think about, to me, all of like Simon Egan's Primarchs, like every time I see one, I'm amazed how like, wow, that wasn't exactly what I was anticipating, even though I didn't necessarily know what I was anticipating. And I have to question it a little bit. Like, does that pose look right? Are those proportions right? Things like this. Like, I feel I always question that. And I mean, I think that's good, but I think in part of the reason for it is because most of Games Workshop models are very kind of heroically proportioned and such. And so many of their models are Space Marines that for years and years had very ridiculous proportions that people's vision of what a model should look like and what proportions should look like are often somewhat skewed. And
very skewed, not even
Egan doesn't, he seems to kind of do what he wants with these things, and that's kind of why I like him so much. He injects his own sort of creativity in things and plays with the proportions and tries to make them perhaps a little bit more true to life if it was like a normal human physique, but like amped up a little bit. And I think that's interesting. And he also, as I've mentioned, sort of plays with the different proportions and such and makes his models, to me, seem a lot more like sort of like a classic sculpture. Like when you think about sculptures and such in art, I feel often it's talked about like what makes a good sculpture is something that you're compelled to like view it from all angles. Like just seeing it at one angle isn't enough. You need to just walk around it, see the other views, because you're just sort of drawn to those things. And I feel more than most of Games Workshop models, I think Simon Egan's Primarchs sort of have that element where like you feel you need to look at these different angles and you're sort of rewarded for doing that. That even like Gilliman, for example, is somewhat of a static pose as he's sort of like addressing a huge crowd or something. And even that, when you just sort of look at it from different angles, there's more of sort of a dynamic pose to that than maybe it initially looks like. And so I'm confident this Sanguinius model will have a very similar sort of thing, that there will be extra neat details and interesting elements of sort of his own imagining that he put in there that I think will be good. And yeah, so even the Gilliman model, like I feel the original image like was not necessarily the best angle, that made it look perhaps slightly awkward, but once you rotate it a little bit, it looks you get it more. You see what Egan was trying to accomplish with it, and I think Sanguinius will be a similar sort of thing.
I agree.
I don't know. Do we have too much more we want to say about this notion? I mean, I think
there's one other this, I think, maybe a Russian sculptor had kind of made their own version of Sanguinius a little while back. That's at a much larger scale, like sort of like a large action figure thing. That a lot of people, or I've seen a few people online posting like, this is what we should have gotten for Sanguinius, but instead we got this bad Forge World version. And I think that's another thing that's just sort of grinds my gears, and I don't know, just don't much like. I mean, and so admittedly, this other one is certainly like the artist is very talented.
Oh yeah, he's really good.
But like I feel it's somewhat interesting in that this other version, like I mean, it was digitally sculpted and printed, which like all of Simon Egan's stuff, unless he's changed, which I don't think is in the case. Like Simon Egan hand sculpts all the stuff, and at a much smaller scale. Like this one was digitally sculpted at a far larger scale, and despite that, the Forge World one is still more detailed. Like the face is more detailed, the armor is more detailed.
Certainly, the feathers have more detail,
and like it's like
I guess we don't necessarily know what size he sculpts at, do we? Like,
yeah, I mean, there's a chance he sculpts like at a 3-up sort of thing that they then shrink or whatever. But even if he does sculpt it at like a 3-up size, that would probably be somewhat comparable to this, but it's still hand sculpting. And
this looks like it came out of World of Warcraft.
No, not
what it reminds me of.
The Kabuki model, the Kabuki. Like, this is a good sculpt. It's a more traditional pose, and I can see why people would like that. It's a good model.
Yeah, I feel it's a lot
done. But I feel when people, like, those, like, the so stupid internet memes are like, oh, this was the Sanguinius model we deserve, and then the one we got. Like, that's essentially saying, like, the Forge World one is a bad model. And I don't think you could objectively actually say that. I mean, maybe you don't like the pose from the one image you got, but there's like I don't feel you can really make an argument to say that it's a bad sculpt, because it's not.
You could make an argument that the Kabuki model is a bad sculpt.
Yeah, it's true.
Bad. God. I mean, maybe if you like the really cartoony, awful proportions of...
Then you're probably playing War Machine.
Yeah, it's true. And I mean, if that's what you like, go for it. I'll go for it. It's fine. But, I mean, I could see why people could like the model, but I can't understand how people could say...
The Bloodthirster head looks pretty alright on that base.
Yeah, it's fine.
Yeah, but as we sort of mentioned, I feel like every single Primarch is sort of followed by this sort of thing. Maybe not quite as critical and negative as perhaps this one, but almost all of them have someone like really upset about it and thinking it's terrible. But within a few months, there are lots of them. People have their own versions of them painted, entered in Golden Demon, this and that. And like, it just sort of falls down to like, well, it's another great Primarch model. And I think that will be the same thing that ultimately happens here, and it will slowly start to be used in Ink 28 conversions and that sort of thing. So I don't think it'll be any different here.
Yeah, it's a great model.
I mean, I guess some people also aren't in love with the like rock that's behind him, and like I admit I'm not necessarily in love with that either. But whenever it's really hard to make a good sort of flying base that looks natural and not awkward, and I think this is a much better attempt than most. And admittedly, I feel if we would see more angles of it, I feel there's a good chance like he's sort of attached with via his sort of loincloth sort of thing there. Or maybe it something in the back. And I feel if we had more angles of this, we could maybe see that it's further attack, like there's more distance between that and him, and looks more natural than maybe it appears from this particular image. But yeah, a lot of that stuff, like you just can't tell that much from this image. So to immediately start nitpicking like, oh, this is the worst model ever, when it's more just like, I don't like the pose, or I don't like the hair, or that's not the face I would have put on him, seems ridiculous to say that it's a horrible model. I mean, and that's even coming from us, and our whole podcast often revolves around us complaining about models. Yeah. But I feel when we do have a criticism, we try to like either fix it with our own conversions or something, or like have something constructive to say about it, not just like, oh, this is so terrible, like the artists have no talent or something, which is kind of the impression I get from a lot of the people here, which is what sort of grates against me.
Because I feel a lot of people commenting, like, it's fine they have an opinion, but like most of them have probably never sculpted anything, so it's hard to like, how I've started sculpting more and more now over the years, and like when you see a good sculpt, like it's really something to be appreciated.
I mean, I feel we are so blessed that Simon Egan is still making these models. Like, he's been doing it for like 8 years or something.
It's been a long time.
I am so pleased that he's still doing these and will probably continue to make Primarchs, because I know every single one of them that he releases will sort of challenge some of my views of it and make me think more about the model. And everyone will have interesting armor or weapons or a different, unique looking face that like adds a different element to the character that maybe wasn't there before, and somehow turns some relatively rubbish pieces of artwork that have been released in the past into something that actually looks cool. Mm-hmm. Not that I want to criticize like Black Library's artists too much. Like they're often are good, but rarely do they blow me away as like, wow, like that's awesome art. Like I would love to have that framed or whatnot, which I feel like all the Primarch models, at least the ones that Egan has sculpted, I feel like strike me as sort of like a masterpiece, as opposed to just like, that's the Primarch. So I don't know. Hopefully, because I think it's either this weekend or next is the Horus Heresy Weekender or Open Day or whatever they call it.
So we'll be flooded with new images, and I guess
so
it'll be interesting to see how people react to the more images, and if we see if people's opinions and stuff change.
So I mean, I feel, because I mean, I guess at least a lot of people do. A lot of people have, I feel, in the comments I've read, do just say that like it looks good. I don't necessarily like the pose. So there are still a lot of people like that. It's just easy to latch on to the overly negative.
Yeah, like internet raging.
Yeah, so I mean,
yeah,
and a lot I think also
about the model. It's cool. Like I feel I'd almost like to buy the model. Like, and it's been a while since I've actually purchased one of the models, one of the Primarch models.
I think we should, and at least have a post on the blog where we show some of the parts, and would be
we
neat.
Could get one of the Kabuki. I don't think I want to. I don't want to support
Kabuki.
Yeah, won't support them.
Yeah, the trash won't do it. But yeah, I honestly, I mean, we'll have to see more pictures and angles of it, but I think it's probably one of the best Primarch models.
It's good.
Because, like, just Sanguinius is such an iconic character. Like, he's like an angel, no less. Like, just such an uphill battle. You'd have to like face to create a good version of him. Which, admittedly, all the Primarchs are somewhat like that, but I feel Sanguinius more than most. And just the fact that he has wings, sort of like, oh, you should make him this crazy pose, but like actually doing that in a believable way is pretty challenging because not too many people have wings. So I don't know. I'm really excited about it. And yeah, I think we'll have to get the model in some way. And hopefully Forge World has upped their game a little bit such that it won't be filled with mold shifts and that sort of thing. Which admittedly I think they have. And they've started to get better at putting foam padding in with all the pieces and those sorts of things to make sure they arrive like not broken and such, which is good. Because I feel a bunch of the Primarchs we have purchased in the past, like almost all of them have had some like terrible mold shift that like destroys some of the fine detail that can't easily be fixed without a lot of skill on your own part.
Yeah. Well, I think maybe we're just about done with this episode. We're done complaining and
we've talked for 45 minutes.
Yeah, I don't know if we really added anything valuable, but
no, but
I feel if anything, like I think people should spend more time appreciating the sculpts and stuff that Games Workshop and like Forge World and stuff produces. I mean, even the very worst of their sculpts, they still always have something that you can appreciate. And all of them took a lot of effort and time by the sculptors themselves. And I guess in many regards, unless you're actually a sculptor and do sculpting yourself, sometimes it's a little hard to get a sense of what went into it.
Yeah, if you do just want to get that kabuki, you think that pose, this is better or whatever, like, that's fine. Go out and do that. Like, don't talk to us about it. I'm excited. Both of the models we talked about tonight, this female commissar and this, I think, are great looking, and I can't wait to see more of them, more like it, and just more pictures and stuff of those actual models. And even though some might say otherwise, I think, again, this Sanguinius model is a great indication that Forge World still has it per se. There may have been some times where there wasn't too much great coming out for the Horus Heresy stuff, but they still have Simon Egan, which is one of the best sculptors in the world, working for them. So like, there's a lot of good things are still yet to come, I think. So that's exciting.
Yeah.
But I guess with that, maybe we should just call this. Does anyone have any last words?
Nope, we got it covered.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. Well, I guess thanks for listening, everybody.
Until next time.
Yeah. Until next time, and we'll talk to you again soon.
Yeah, we did it.
Yeah. We're still twitching, but we recorded that podcast. Which episode number is it?
53. 53 great episodes.
All quality. All quality episodes.
Yeah, so do you think the weekend, or do you think the model will be available to purchase like this weekend or whenever the weekender is?
I'm sure it will be. They'll have a limited amount of it, and
yeah, that's my
probably not a ton.
Yeah, I think that's probably the case.
Yeah. Well, so I guess now that we're still twitching, is anyone interested in me unboxing some of the Goblin models that we acquired?
Yeah.
Yeah, Gabo
Yeah, we got
I'm
a lot
interested
of them.
in it.
We got a lot of them, and I don't know. I feel it's a little unclear how many models we'll actually make with all the goblins and stuff we got, but we got tons of them. And I feel the ones that we have the best chance of actually making stuff and doing conversions with are, what are they even called? I just like to think of them as like the goblin shamans, the gloom spite.
Gabapalooza?
Gabapalooza. Jesus, I don't think I ever actually read that. But these are very interesting little models. Each one of the goblins is very, very unique and interesting. And if you look at the back of them all, it's actually sort of interesting. They have each one has a different name. Like this one here with like the little masks or whatever is the scaremonger. The next one was like a little. He has apparently a squirp squig sticker. He's the spiker.
Obviously.
Yeah, the shroom mancer who's riding like a little mushroom. He has the moon staff. We have the boggle eye who has a mesmerizing staff. And then we have the Brugit, who has a brewing rig. Huh. Yes,
I think they're all pretty great. And it's kind of cool that the one is like one of the little like scuttling sort of grots that they had in Silver Tower with like all the legs and stuff. It's sort of neat to continue to see that imagery.
I really like that the boggle eye one. He has like a little what almost looks like a sentient rock.
Yeah, pet rock.
And eyes, like that's really great.
The one has the little flying fungus, and the one a little.
Who's taking a bite out of this mushroom, like.
Oh yeah, that's true.
This and like a lot of them have like this is like a little like Venus flytrap type guy who like I guess is eating like a snotling.
Yeah, lots of just sort of creative, interesting stuff going on there, which I think sort of just speaks to delightful goblins and such that were released for the Gloom Spite kits, I think.
Yeah, they've got great range. The Shroom Mancer, he also has these like little familiars, these like little fungus with little robes and stuff. Like I don't even know what they're doing, but they're great. All right, so I've talked enough about the box. Let's actually look at the sprues and stuff, and maybe it'll become a little more apparent where some of the details are. And there's probably a bunch of stuff that I didn't notice from the actual picture.
Yeah, I think that is true. Like all of Games Workshop models now, there's so many details and interesting features of the models that it's hard to really appreciate them until you really have them in your hands and can actually look at them and put them together, that sort of thing.
It comes with one sprue, everybody.
It's all they need.
Yeah, it's all they need. You have a bunch of bases. These are pretty exciting.
Oh yeah,
all the same ones. Let's look at the instruction manual. That's nice. They actually have really large, like, colored pictures of some of the detail and stuff, so you can get a good sense of the effort and stuff that was put into painting them. Like, this one here, his like pupils are all like spiraled, like he's high on something.
Some sort of mad mushroom or.
Yeah, they're great. Goddamn, I love them.
I feel some, even if it wouldn't used for a conversion or whatever, it'd be fun just to assemble them because they're great.
Yeah, they're great. My God. Oh wow, look, this is great. So here's like a little diagram of all the different little like mushrooms and stuff that you can glue on the bases.
Oh, that's nice.
It's like a little centipede type bug. here, it's hard to actually see, but there's like this cute little centipede bug. Like we might be able to find a place for him in more time.
Oh yeah. Well, I feel that all the little mushrooms and stuff, I feel it could work really nicely
They,
on just various bases with some different tufts and static grass and that sort of thing. Like a careful application of that sort of stuff could really go a long way.
I agree.
There are the rules for the shroom mancers.
There's the rules in here.
Hard to care about that. But it is nice they put them in there.
Okay. Wow, we looked at that enough. The actual sprue itself, like, man, it is loaded with stuff. Here's like this like little weird gargoyle type thing. That's interesting. And like a little clutch of mushrooms. One of the little goblin heads that actually looks really nice. Yeah, it's interesting how they cut a lot of these models. Like, so this one riding the fungus, like, that's really interesting how interconnected everything is.
Yeah, I feel that's certainly one of the difficulties of sculpting in general, and certainly digital sculpting, is ways to sort of cut them up that will effectively sort of minimize mold lines, seam lines, things like that. And Games Workshop is really good at doing it now. But I feel a lot of people more recently being critical about it, like, oh, like, no, they're not multi-part. Can't do my conversions or whatever. It's like you're never talking about conversions. You're talking about the like most minimal kit bash.
Yeah.
And I don't know. Personally, I like that the Games Workshop now most of their models are cut in a way that like you assemble in a few particular ways, but result in a more dynamic, interesting sculpt.
Because they're often posed a lot better. Okay, so here's that one little, like, robed little fungus creature. He's cool. Like, he could, I feel that these little guys, this little guy could just be put right on a base of some model for more time and it'd work great.
Have to do it.
Here's the other one. He has like a little poker, like a little stick that he's poking people. Here's the cute little the one who's eating the goblin, snarling. Oh wait, there's the little here's the little tiny centipede type creature. He's great.
Well, there are also those little like mushroom familiar guys too that are pretty cute.
Yeah, I was just talking about them.
Okay, yeah, they're
One of them is like directly attached to like the model itself, and the other one's relatively free.
okay. Well, I guess one thing, this isn't directly related to this one, but people talking about how the way the models are cut, that you have less variability or whatever. I mean, I think even Games Workshop is somewhat taking that to heart. Like, I think the new trolls have been designed in a way that they're very modular, that their legs and sort of torsos can sort of fit with most of the different arms and such, and different head combinations that can lead to a huge assortment of different model types.
I think that's very true for a lot of the stuff in this new Goblin range. Like,
and so I think Games Workshop has really done a lot and some kind of impressive sort of engineering feats to get lots of different sorts of poses and stuff to seamlessly work together and still kind of maintain that high quality.
This poor goblin here is missing all of his teeth. That's why he's holding that skull. with the big teeth. And there's a little bat here. Little bat hanging. Yeah, so
Yeah,
there are
that's
tons of
great.
stuff here. And like I feel a lot of these like little robe bodies and stuff, I could see stuff like this popping up all over the place in like fantasy conversions of like humans or even Ink 28 conversions, like with a little modification of like the torso size and the legs and stuff, they could work pretty well for such a model. The little spider goblin sorcerer with all the legs, he's like patting one of the little mouth mushrooms on the head.
That's great.
Yeah, boy, I feel these little guys. We'll have to. Oh, actually, that's interesting. So the one with the spiral eyes that were painted like spirals, those were actually molded into the eyes.
Oh, really?
So like, yeah, it's interesting. Like, I feel like a kit like this, like really, there's more detail in this, in the plastic, than you see in most Forge World sculpts and stuff now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which is interesting. So like, Games Workshop have really gotten very good with doing stuff in plastic. So I guess overall, this is a great set. And we'll have to remember this. Feel these goblins here are probably a strong contender for model or like set of the year.
Yeah, no, already right out the gate in 2019. Right out the gate. Now we just have to do something with them. If anyone watches this and has ideas or something they would like to see, let us know.
Yeah, what do you want to see us do with them?
Could make some HUD conversions.
Yeah, I feel I'll have to make a conversion or two. I almost feel like I could try and make like a little adventuring Grot or something, or Gretchen or Goblin for more time.
That would be neat.
So we also have the little loon boss, and I don't know if I don't necessarily love all of the elements of him, but there are a bunch of things that are, I think, particularly great. Like his little curved feet are really great, and one of the things, like I haven't actually opened the model yet, but one of the things that I was really surprised by, his helmet, the little skull helmet, which maybe I should just try and open this up. Yeah, I'm not going to because I'll probably cut myself on camera for these stupid clamshell packs. But the detailing on his face is actually detailed. Like, so the face underneath the mask was sculpted.
Is it a way that you could put the visor up or something, or it's just
no. Like, let me try and open it. I'm gonna do this off camera, so I have more control over what's going on.
okay?
But you literally, like, the two halves of the mask enclose the head, and the head, like, most of the details of his face are sculpted. Like, his ears are sculpted, his eyes, his mouth. The only thing that's not, like his nose, is largely missing.
Okay.
So it is sculpted in kind of a weird way, but like if you were into doing a bunch of sculpting and converting, like you could probably actually use the head.
Well, you know, Adam, you are into things.
Yeah.
Okay, so his mask is literally like just two halves. There's one half. And so in the mask there's a little slot for the ears and a little slot to see into his eyes. And it's like that on both sides. And then his actual face, there you can, let's see if we can get it to, let's move this out of the way so the focusing is better. Okay, so there you can vaguely see it. So he has his little teeth are sculpted, his eyes, and at least the base of the nose. So I think that's kind of an interesting detail, to the point where I feel it's gonna be a pain to paint. Like, my goodness, like,
Yeah, that's neat.
it's gonna be a huge pain to paint if like you want to maintain some of that, but like it's cool. It's a neat model, and he is a crazy, crazy base. Like, look at those mushrooms. Wouldn't want to run into them. Tear your face off. Or something.
Since it's a little past midnight, maybe we should think about wrapping this up. I kind of want to go to bed.
Yeah, I feel we can wrap it up. All right, everybody. Thanks for any viewers now or anyone who watches this after the fact.
Yeah,
at
no.
the very least, you can expect us to have another stream next week at a similar time. But also, I'm hoping sometime this week, maybe closer to the weekend, maybe I'll do another hobby stream or so. It'll probably be focusing around like sculpting and stuff, because I'm still doing a lot of that for the Sisters of Sigmar, for my Mordheim Warband. So I guess until then, keep on working with the hobby.
Yep.
Yep.
Talk to you again soon.
Yeah, see you, everybody.
See ya.